guys, welcome back to Race Report, the Geico Gecko edition.
Diving in this week, it is Singapore Marina Bay Street Circuit night race. Lauren, I know this is one of your favorite races. It's one of my favorites. Starting it off, FP3, we had an entire red flag just due to a lizard on the track.
I kind of wish that it was in the race to make the race a little bit more interesting. Maybe we wouldn't have as big of, gaps up front if we had to stop for a lizard. But, it's not Singapore without him being on track at some point. Other little random tidbits about, I almost knocked my lamp over. Singapore weekend was Mr. Max Verstappen basically getting sent to the principal's office for saying potty words and given 2 days of community service. This is not the first time that Max has had to do community service. Apparently he had to go shadow people at Formula E once for his community service. I don't know much about that, but I just saw someone talking about it. Anyways, so he in a press conference said the car was F'd, and I'm not saying it so the FIA can't come get me. And he got fined for that, which I think is ridiculous because the amount of times that drivers curse on the radio or just in general, I'm why is he getting in trouble for this? Anyways, so then after the post-qualifying race press conference, when the top 3 sit in the little room, he was being asked questions and he was just giving one word deadpan answers, and it was everything to me to kind of protest the FIA. And then at one point he's to the reporter, he's please don't take this personally, this is not directed towards you. And so then the kind of interviewer knew not to ask follow-up questions because Max was not going to answer them, and instead he decided to hold his own press conference outside in the paddock so he could say whatever he wanted. So it was hilarious just seeing the picture of him standing outside and everyone with their iPhones on the recording thing just shoved it in his face, trying to hear what he had to say.
Bumping out there, bumping Max Verstappen podcast.
Literally. He's I am the moment.
So on to quali, Lando takes pole again, Max P2, Lewis P3, standout, front row. Checo is out in Q2 and starts in 13th. Oops.
Oops.
And Hulkenberg is in P6, so good on the Haas's. Carlos crashed out in Q3, a big tear, and then had the most fabulous catwalk across the track, which only cost him the measly sum of $25,000, but it was, I'm sure, worth every penny. That cameraman with the sweat, it was giving Zoolander, but what Zoolander actually wanted to give, not the point of Zoolander. And then Charles had his lap deleted, so the Ferraris did start in 9 and 10. So a little bit sad for them, but we persevere.
Definitely a crazy quali, especially after the Ferraris were running so well in free practice. But to each their own. You can't win every weekend. On to the race. We have talked about this for basically the entire season, that Mr. Lando Norris, when he clinches a pole position, similar to Charles Leclerc, has a very, very hard time converting that into a win. For the first time, Lando Norris had a great start and maintained the lead of the race. Lewis started on softs for his tire strategy in hopes of making up places at the start. That didn't work out. And Franco Colapinto, listen, he's only in for a few races, but he is really making headlines. He comes in with a dive bomb. Alex Albon gets on the radio, immediately pissed, immediately upset. Unfortunately, Albon later retires the car as it is overheating. And Franco finishes the race in P11, just outside of the points. So as much as we hate to admit it, in the short couple of races he's been in the car, he has really, really been pulling results.
He is his own Liam Lawson. Like, I feel like when Liam had to come in for Danny and was just like, move over, guys. But, like, it's hard. Pulled an Elle Woods. Franco has done it again.
Yeah, his performance has been very impressive, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Alex stacks up to Carlos next year if Franco coming in is doing this well in the Williams already.
Not that I would ever wish this on Alex, but I would love to see Franco and Carlos together. Like, I
I'm
feel
just
like
flirting with everyone constantly
with each other,
in Spanish.
literally, no lights are on, nobody's home, but the best
Yapping.
marketing. It would literally Williams would skyrocket to my favorite team. I'd be like, yep, come on, give me the drama.
I really hope he gets a seat next year. I love Valtteri, but give my man Franco that seat. I would like to think that Lando being able to stay in the lead after lap 1 was because of my bullying on our Instagram story, and that's the reason that he won. So you're welcome, Lando, for a little bit of bullying to get you there.
There you go. Little healthy bullying never hurt anyone, right?
It clearly helped, and he definitely totally saw my Instagram story.
He looked at it, he screenshotted it, printed it out, put it on his wall, and said, "I will make
I'll
you
tell
proud,
her.
Lauren. I will
I'll
make
tell
you
her.
proud."
So, again, with my Haas boys, K-Mag, he had to DNF in the end, but Hulkenberg had an amazing qualifying. He qualified, P6? He, during the first stint, did an incredible job of literally not letting anyone through. His defensive driving was great. Charles couldn't get through, Alonso couldn't get through. He was just nope. Which, ruined Charles's race, I'm not gonna lie, but play for Hulkenberg. And he finished P9 and got Haas some more points, so that is exciting. And another thing that I was really sad about with it being Singapore, because it's only my favorite race, because it's only very exciting, and we have a safety car. And normally in Baku we have a safety car, and we have not had a safety car in 9 races now. And I really miss Bernd Maylander. And I'm sure he misses us too, because poor man has to sit in that car all week for 9 weeks in a row, not getting to do anything. But yeah, hopefully he'll come back. Hopefully someone will hit the wall. Now we don't have Logan Sargent to bring out safety cars for us anymore, so I don't really know.
That was just salt in the wound, Lauren. That was uncalled for.
We can bring back Mazepin, Latifi, Mazepin, Grosjean, somebody to give us a safety car, please. Speaking of a significant amount of races in a row without something, we have had 8 races in a row without Max Verstappen winning and without the Dutch national anthem, which is just absolutely absurd to me. And I'm happy about it, but now I kind of miss it. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want Max to just win. I miss that song. I know.
Right? I was just thinking the other day, I was like, I couldn't tell you. If it played out in the crowd, I'd be like,
never have I ever thought that I was gonna miss
the Dutch national anthem.
I know. I'm okay, I'm kind of over the British one now. Can we move on? Because George and Lando and Lewis, it's just that. And they only get 1 song. So that's kind of boring. At least Ferrari gets 2 songs and Red Bull gets 2 songs.
Oh, that's what I want. I want more of the Italian national anthem, because that bops hard.
That is a major bop.
I want to play it on the podcast again. I want that to be
that was so good,
extra.
that sign off.
So, more to the point of the Ferraris not having the most best finishes. They did better than when they did in quali, so an improvement is an improvement. Ferraris finished P5 and P7, Charles and Sainz. Not bad, but just, not great all around. Much slower than when they were in free practice, but better than quali. And then Checo just barely squeaked in to the points with a P10 finish. And I don't know, did y'all see this today, that he is now officially out of the running for championship?
Yep.
Yeah.
Kind of a callback to what Lauren was saying about Hulkenberg and him holding everyone off, especially handicapping Charles' race. In a way, Mans kind of really helped out, the whole front of the grid. Lando was out in front by a huge margin. I think at one point he had over a 30-second gap between him and Max behind him. Literally had a gap so big that he was able to pit and come back out of the pits and still be in the front, which is nuts. Not only did he finally lead the first lap, he just led the whole race. He said, "This is my race. You guys can all go home. I don't know why you're still here."
I really like Singapore. I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite race, but it's definitely top 3. I was just kind of disappointed. I wanted some more infighting. I was so incredibly happy for Lando that he was able to get pole, keep pole, and win his race. But I'm like, okay, he okay, not even a lizard.
Especially with Singapore last year, like that was just such a good race. With like Liam doing so well and being the highest qualifying Red Bull, and the Carlos being the only non-Red Bull win. And like this Singapore was like reminiscent of all the races of Max last season, like winning by 20 seconds, like doing a pit stop and coming out in the lead. I mean, he didn't get the Grand Slam in the end, but like the amount of Grand Slams that Max got last season was just like ridiculous. So I'm like, okay, so
I fear we may be falling into the age-old trap of the grass is always greener on the other side, because last year we were like, can we just get not like a Max win? Like anyone. We would take anyone at this point who's just not Max. And now we're like, well, we're not happy. We're not happy that there are so many drivers that are winning. Where's the Dutch national anthem?
It's also funny too. I saw this is the only track that he's never won.
Yeah.
Really?
I know, I saw that.
It's the only one. In the last 5 years, they've had 5 different winners. It was like farthest back Lewis, then Seb, then Checo, then Carlos, to Lando now.
Mm.
So like this is a fun race because it's usually like a total toss-up on who's going to win.
Yeah.
But the fact that Max has never won this track is crazy to me.
So, yeah, I mean, it's sort of more to what I was saying previously. Like it was a good race. I'm not gonna lie, it was a good race. It was just kind of anticlimactic almost. All the finishers
Simple.
had yeah, which is good, but I kind of would have preferred that for like a maybe less exciting track. Like Singapore, you kind of go in with the assumption that it's going to be an interesting race. So then when you don't necessarily get it, it's sort of like, okay, so I got up at 6 a.m. for no crashes? Awesome. No fiery flaming ball? Okay, great. No safety
lizards.
Car? Awesome. So
I know what we should do. Next year we should go and we should just have a bag of lizards and start letting them onto the track.
Can we do the plastic ones? It's not even real lizards. It's just like plastic lizards.
Yeah, that
the little mechanical ones.
So like they move, and so they like, oh my gosh, shall we like stop, like red flag it, yellow flag it? But it's just so it won't actually kill any lizards, but it'll like mess up the race.
All of the podium all the podium finishers, there we go, new word to add to the collection, fissioners, had 20-second gaps between them. Lando P1, of course, whoop whoop. Max P2, Oscar P3. We love the double McLaren podium. Very excited about that. And a great drive from Lando as well. Like, I think we all can sit here and say comfortably that no one can have any complaints on how he won this time. And it was a very well-deserved win.
Yeah, he absolutely aced this race. Like, every note that Lauren has given him this season, he said heard, and like
he's been listening to me. I just know it.
He took it to heart. He really said, he's like, I can't let my mentor down. Lauren, you are the Mark Webber to Lando. And he was like, I can't let my mentor down. I have to do better. Lauren Robinson of Knoxville, Tennessee, you will not be disappointed in me this next race. He psychs himself up in the mirror and is like, okay, what would Lauren do? What would Lauren do? Don't lose P1.
All I'm saying is I never actually thought I would hear Lauren say like, okay, Lando like really did a great job. And then when she texted like, damn, like dude killed it, I was like, is the sky falling? Like, are we okay?
I mean, I'm giving credit where credit's due. I gave Checo his credit last week. I like Lando a lot more than I like Checo, though. So
bringing it back to the post-race celebration and the podium, all I'm gonna say is my favorite part of a race where like the McLarens do well is the minute that they pull the cars into Park Firm and get out. And it's the helmet comes off, the balaclava comes off, the cameraman zooms all the way in. absolute beauty, absolute grace. Oscar, beautiful. Lando, and then DC literally dumping water on him and him hugging him back. I was like, no, this is so cute. I live for it. But even better is when we get the actual podium, the smile on Lando's face, the smile of like, nobody can say anything. I have done everything right this race and it is mine. I was sitting in my bed just like swooning, little heart eyes popping out of my face. And in case you don't know, everybody listening, I am an LN4 fan until the
Really?
end of my
I
life.
could not tell by your outfit. So, kind of switching gears to this is gonna be a sad part of the podcast, so I'm sorry. Daniel Ricciardo, everyone probably knows kind of what happened with him this weekend, but there all of a sudden kind of came out rumors that this might have been Singapore might have been his last race and he might not be racing from Austin onwards. They from the beginning kind of screwed up his strategy, which I'm like, if this is your last race, like, can you get it together? And pitted him like kind of right at the beginning. And then pitted him again. It should have been a one-stop race. He was on a two-stop race. And he went in for another pit stop, and we're like, what is he doing? This was with 2 laps to go. And they put on soft tires, and so they're like, oh, okay, he's going to try and take the fastest lap away from Lando, which he does. So he comes over the radio and tells Max that Danny got fastest lap, i.e. meaning Lando doesn't get that extra point. And Max was very grateful for that over the radio. His message was really sweet. I was like, I'm gonna cry, especially with the commentators too. And the commentators just wouldn't shut up about like this being Daniel's last race. I'm like, can we talk about this
Nothing
later?
is
Like, I don't
confirmed.
like. I want to be happy for like my McLaren double podium and not sad right now. And he also won driver of the day, which was really sweet. Then it made it even more sad because that's what we all do, like F1 community, when someone it's their last race. So I was like, this is so sad that we're all like thinking that this is true, that we're all voting for him for driver of the day. And so the rumor is that Liam is going to replace him in Austin, which that's like, also, if you're going to do that from a business standpoint, why would you replace Daniel Ricciardo, who is like the honorary American, the honorary Texan, before Austin?
Doesn't he have a key to the city?
Literally, he does. Like, he is like literally an honorary Texan, is an Austin man, and I'm like, that is just stupid. Like, but like, if you're gonna do it mid-season, number one, it's stupid. Number two, it's like extra stupid. Like, if you're gonna do it right before Austin, when that's like his home race, basically. Yeah. And like, Americans have adopted him, Texans have adopted him. Like, man rode into the paddock on a horse in Austin. Like, I don't get it. I don't like it. I'm not a fan. Okay, I'm done now.
In the post-race interview, I've watched so many TikTok edits, especially to the Zach Bryan song. That's is it like Pink Skies?
Yeah.
It's the really like, and it's just his like, I mean, he is almost in tears. And I think that's what scares me the most, is the fact that, like, talk is cheap. Anyone will spread any kind of rumor, especially to make a buck. But when this affects the driver to this degree, to where he is having to fight back tears and hold on to every shred of composure he can, I feel like that's sort of the nail in the coffin. And that even though I'm like holding out the tiniest shred of hope that it's like, okay, well, nothing officially has been announced, it's sort of like the writing's on the wall. And even, I think it was Christian Horner who said there's a bigger picture beyond Daniel Ricciardo, which is just such a tough pill to swallow. So don't love that. Thanks, Christian Horner, for ruining something else, but good on you. And then sort of like what Lauren said, this just kind of feels like it's coming out of nowhere, especially strategically wise, when Austin, who F1 has for some reason still claim they want an American audience, but yet they seem to be doing everything but let Andretti in, please. Give Austin Daniel Ricciardo. It literally baffles me. I'm sorry. I digress. But then what are like? There's been rumors that I don't know. I'm just kind of frustrated because it almost feels like Red Bull is letting the media do their dirty work for them and prep us before they actually have to own up and, grow a pair and do the hard stuff. And it irritates me a lot.
I know Lauren and I were texting during the race, and we were kind of debating the like back and forth. I think it's both. In at the end of the day, was the point of fastest lap to help take points away from Lando to help Max, because now that Lando didn't get that fastest lap point, like even if Lando wins every single race and Max comes second, he'll basically lose by a point in the championship to Max. Or was the whole point so that, even though Daniel didn't have a good race, that he'll be able to go out on a high note and have that like fastest lap like added to his record? I think it's a little bit of both, but kind of what Kaylee said about how it's kind of wrong that like Red Bull's letting everyone do their dirty work for them. That even in this stage of the game, it feels like Daniel's ability for success was sabotaged to benefit Max. And it's always been about that. It has always, always, at the end of the day, Red Bull will do anything to benefit Max at the cost of all of their other drivers. Instead of dwelling on kind of like how much this sucks, because it does, we all have agreed this sucks a lot, I think it's important to talk about Daniel Ricciardo himself as a driver. And I don't think people understand like the impact that he has. Watching his post-race interview where he's basically crying, I actually cried. I sent you guys a photo of me like laying in bed crying. And in terms of when I first started getting into F1, and yeah, I was a DTS fan, sue me. Now that I've watched full seasons of the actual sport, I can see how actually ridiculous Drive to Survive is. I'm still going to watch it this season when it comes out. Just because I like to. Daniel was like really instrumental to helping me fall in love with the sport. I don't care about his record. I don't care about his stats. He is so kind and goofy, and like that charismatic energy that he like brings. The grid can be a really cold place, but he is not a cold person. And I don't think there's a single driver on the grid that doesn't like Daniel Ricciardo. He's not had a great last couple years. When he got the boot at McLaren, Zach Brown, you were enemy number one. You are lucky I like Oscar and have forgiven you just a little bit. And when he came back with Red Bull, I was so happy because I was like, okay, they're welcoming him back in. They're going to lift him back up and help him feel better about himself. And just like in general, I don't really want to live in a world where Daniel's not on the grid, at least for the next couple years. Like, I would love to see him get one more good season and maybe not win everything, but finish in like, I don't know, the top 10 of the drivers' championship. And like, I think for me, that would be enough.
Definitely. And I think what kind of cinched it, that made it even more like gut wrenching, was I saw that on the back of his helmet he wrote "Not without a fight," and I was like,
that's been his slogan all season.
But for my thoughts and feelings on this, I've titled this soliloquy "The Spare Prince." Sorry guys, I deal with sadness with comedy, and I can't do it any other way. So for these Daniel rumors, like, I truly am. If it does come true, I am very devastated. Sort of to what Julia was echoing. He has such a light about him and such a warm presence. Like, he is the type of person that you could get the biggest blowout on the track, but when you come off, he leaves that there. and like you are no different than before the race than you are after the race. Like what happens during it, he's not going to let that affect how he treats others. And I think he always chooses to put kindness first, which I think is a rarity when you're competing at such high levels of sport, especially in such tight knit groups where you are basically competing not only against your own teammate, but your closest friends as well. And he's never, it's never felt like he's let that air of competition or cockiness get in to how he treats people, which I think is just such a special quality. And it's such a bittersweet kind of full circle because, I mean, boiling down to bare bones, the whole reason, I'm not the whole reason, but like he left Red Bull because he did not want to play second fiddle to Max. And in what hopefully is not, but could possibly be his last race, his sort of last act was to support Max and make it so that he could, cinch the championship. So that was, it was a tough pill to swallow, but it was also sort of, it was very bittersweet. I don't know how to explain it properly, but it didn't leave me upset that he was able to help Max in that way. And guys, I'm on a bit of cold medicine right now, and I might have been up at 3 a.m. watching sad Daniel interview TikToks, and I might get a little poetic and melodramatic when it's 3 a.m. cold medicine and sad Daniel TikTok. So I messaged Julia something and I pulled it out from our things. I said, "This is the burden of the second born prince, always the spare, never the king."
That reminds me, there's like an edit that they've been doing in the song is like, always an angel, never a god.
Oh, that
Mm-hmm.
one's
Mm-hmm.
yep. And then I was rewatching, like I went and watched because I watched his post race interview once, and then I was like, nope, I'm good. And then I just watched like clips of it. Well, I went back and it was like it popped up, and it was like the full thing. And rewatching it now, like with a clear head, less cold medicine in my body. I felt that pain. Like I felt every failed dream, every missed opportunity, every like you're not going to make it and you have to be okay with that. When he was giving that interview and those tears, I felt those. Like I felt my own sort of shortcomings through that interview. It was so painful to watch. And Daniel, I really hope you're in Austin. That's all I can say.
When was it Karoon? Or who is, no, what's the other guy's name? I don't remember his name.
The Sky Sports presenter.
Yes, what's his name? When he was in tears too, like interviewing Daniel, and was like, "Well, I hope we see you in Austin," and he was like, he couldn't even get that sentence out to Daniel. I was like,
The honor guard.
The honor guard.
I was like,
the Sky Sports guy standing outside of the hospitality, like listing off everything Daniel's ever done.
yeah, Ted Kravitz. That Ted's
me.
Literally, I was like, I'm gonna cry. I can't do this. Okay, I didn't write my thoughts and feelings out because I was just gonna go off vibes. But as someone who's been watching the sport, well, I guess even before Daniel Ricciardo was in it, like, I can't even think, like, to me, he's just always been there. Like, he's such a, like, pillar of F1. And, like, how Julia said, like, and I've heard a lot of other people talk about this, he got so many people into the sport just through his personality. People seeing clips from Drive to Survive and being like, oh my gosh, this guy, like, who is this guy? I want to know more about him. What's the sport that he does? And, like, I've heard so many people, like, that was their, like, intro into F1 was specifically Daniel Ricciardo. Just because he is that person that always has a smile on his face. He is gonna make you laugh. You could be having like your worst day ever, and he just like comes in and like cracks a joke, and like he puts on his smile, and like if you look at him smile, you can't help but smile back. His like smile and laughter is so contagious, and he's just like the class clown, I feel like, of the grid. And yeah, it'll be weird to think about him not being there if the rumors are true. And I think just for someone too that has been part of the F1 grid for so long and like is so well known and so well loved, to like have this kind of exit is just insane to me. It would just be like the fact that he can't even finish, wouldn't have been able to finish out a whole season and have like a proper goodbye, and like him not even knowing, and like his team and sponsors not even knowing, like it's just, to the lack of like dignity that gives to him and like all of those guys, and like just the people in the paddock too, like how much that affects them. Like they all see each other every weekend. Like, you know, Daniel, I feel like is very good with having like relationships with people and like the paddock people and stuff. So like all the Sky Sports reporters like crying because they've known Daniel for years and years and years and years too. So that, I don't know, that just was really messed up to me, just to have someone like that, them just be like, okay, goodbye. Like we're not.
I think it's crazy, like with the honor guard, I don't think a lot of people realize that this isn't them saying goodbye because they know what's going to happen. This is all of them saying goodbye because they're afraid that something's going to happen and they won't have gotten the chance to.
Yeah. And that's like the other wild thing too. It's like literally, if you like, again, like with no one knowing, like everyone's so upset and saying goodbye because they're like, we don't know if this is goodbye, but like we want to make sure we say goodbye. Like that's just so messed up for so many different people, but for especially for Daniel, obviously, because that's just like playing with people's emotions too. And just, I mean, it just in general would be crazy to see Daniel go out of the sport not on his own terms. Like now the fact that he was brought back, like you would just hope that he would be the one to make that decision and not it be made for him. But switching to a positive note, talking about some of Daniel Ricciardo's achievements throughout his career. It makes, I mean, I'm not old, but it makes me feel old when I like look back and like see pictures of like Lewis and like Daniel like in like the early days, like what the grid looked like in 2012. And I was like, wow, I feel old now that they're all grown up, and I'm grown up too because I'm not 12 years old anymore. But some career stats: he has had 258 entries but 257 starts. He has had 17 fastest laps. He has scored a total of 1,329 points. He's had 3 pole positions, 32 podiums, and 8 wins. So he's had a pretty impressive career, and I think, like everyone, like if we could go back time, we would tell him, do not leave Red Bull. And if that hadn't have happened, then I think those wins and podiums would be even higher. I think my favorite Daniel win always has to be Monaco, and him then jumping in the pool. Like that was such a great race. And I put the most important stat last, which he has, if anyone watches Top Gear, they have, or when they had the Star in the Reasonably Priced Car where celebrities would come on and do a hot lap, and there's this like timing board and you want to beat the other celebrities. But the F1 drivers that came on had their own separate timing sheet, and they drove a different car. And out of all the F1 drivers, that, because this is the only time we had F1 drivers in equal machinery, and he had the fastest lap. So he beat Lewis Hamilton, he beat Kimi Räikkönen, he beat Mark Webber, like they all went on the show. He had the fastest lap time. So I think that's says it all right there.
We love you, Daniel.
We do. We hope to see you in Austin.
I'm going to be crushed if he's not there.
So, as we discussed last week, IndyCar is officially over for the season, but we still have one other racing series active and cooking, and that's going to be NASCAR. Lauren was at the Bristol Motor Speedway this past weekend watching NASCAR live. It is the final race of the playoff round of 16 and the first elimination race.
Yes. So Bristol Motor Speedway is my home track. I am from Johnson City, Tennessee, which is like it's the Tri-Cities area, and Johnson City and Bristol and Kingsport are the Tri-Cities. So this now, crazily enough, like I had never actually gone and seen a race at Bristol until last March was my first time going, and since then I've gone to both races last year and both races this year. I grew up going ice skating at Bristol Motor Speedway every Christmas and doing the Festival Speedway of Lights where you take a lap around the track and see all the Christmas lights, but I'd never actually gone to a race there, which is kind of wild to think about. But I went with my dad, and what I love about the fall race is that it's the night race. So, I mean, any kind of race at night is great. Like, that's why I love Singapore. But there's just something about Bristol at night. It's just always so special. And Bristol, if you don't know, it is a half-mile oval. So it is a very small track. So it normally causes a lot of chaos, which we'll get into that later. It did not happen this time, which was like shocking to me. But it is also, they call it the Last Great Coliseum because it's an enclosed bowl. So it amplifies the sound so much. Like, you physically cannot not wear hearing protection. Like, this time we didn't have like our scanner, like the big headphones. My dad had like big noise canceling headphones, but I just had like my foam earplugs, and it was so loud with that in it. And I had to take it out to like readjust, and it like was painful to have to listen to the sound while I was like trying to get my earbud back in. I was like, this is so loud. So it is the playoffs, like Julia said. So NASCAR, I don't really know how I feel about the playoffs, and we're not going to get into that because it's going to be a long story to like really dive into the playoffs. But a basic rundown. They have their regular, so NASCAR has a really long season. I think there's 36 races. It's long, and they don't have breaks. It's like every weekend. So there's a regular season champion, which is just based off like the championship points. Like, whoever has the highest amount of points at the end of the regular season is the regular season champion. That doesn't really mean anything. It's kind of like, good job, buddy, because everyone is in it for the Cup Series championship. So the playoffs, there is the round of 16, and then the round of 12, and the round of 8, and then the final 4 go into the final race at Phoenix. Each round is 3 races. So the final race of each of those rounds is the elimination race. So that was Bristol. So there were 16 drivers in the playoffs. It always starts with 16. And after this race, 4 of them got knocked out. Points reset after each round. So now that the round of 16 is done, going into the round of 12, those 12 drivers, like, they're back on equal footing for those 3 races. So that kind of makes it interesting. I like how the points don't carry over and it resets, and you kind of have like another battle for 3 races, and then it resets and you have a battle for 3 races. And basically, in the final race in Phoenix, of those 4 drivers, you don't even have to win the race. It's just whoever finishes the highest place of those 4 wins the Cup Series championship. So it is kind of interesting how they do it. But yeah, it's kind of confusing at first. And there's like a whole bunch of nuances to it. Like, they have playoff points and then like normal points. And that I still don't fully understand. But that's the basic overall overarching rundown of the playoffs. Make it into the playoffs. But I should probably preface. It's not the top 16 drivers. You would think it would be like the top 16 drivers with the most amount of points. They make the playoffs. But no. If you win a regular season race, you're automatically in the playoffs. And that's what happened. We talked about it a couple weeks back with Harrison Burton. He was dead last in the standings, and he won the race at Daytona, meaning he automatically got that playoff spot. So you fill up the playoff spots with all the drivers who have won a race, and then whatever spots are left over, then you go by points. So that kind of makes it a little bit more interesting too. Like, you could have someone like Harrison Burton make it into the playoffs who was sitting dead last in the standings.
Oh, going into the start of the Bristol race, Alex Bowman, who we've spoken about before, waking up on the bathroom floor after his win, he is starting on pole, and our GOAT, Kyle Larson, is starting in P2. Kyle quickly takes the lead and wins the first stage of the race. There was a yellow right at the start with a short caution, but kind of like Lauren mentioned, what's normally a absolutely chaotic mess of a race was fairly clean this time around.
Stage 2 was led by Larson, and it was green right up until the end. And they were able to finish the stage on a green with 3 laps. And Larson won, of course. But yeah, it was a very quiet race, besides for keeping down.
Besides the decibel levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the disappointment I felt on the inside.
Yeah. It was, yeah. I mean, this was the dirt track that happened at, but I think when I was there last spring for the dirt race, there were 11 or 12 cautions thrown. Like, we were there because also, like, with the night race, the race started at 7:30, so I was like, oh no, it's Bristol, there's gonna be tons of cautions thrown. Like, this race is gonna be done at midnight, and then we have to drive home. Like, I was like, we're gonna be home at like 3 a.m. But the race ended at 10. Like, that was shocking to me. because they also have the stage breaks, which they run the yellow, so that like makes the race a bit longer. So there were literally 3 yellows because right at the beginning, like you said, there was someone like spun and it was like a very short caution. And then again, it was like all very small things that happened too. And they were able to go green again for the restart and finish the stage, which I appreciated. Like, so you didn't have to end the stage under a caution because you get points for winning a stage too. So you don't want to go under a caution and then not be able to fight for those points. Truex, who's my favorite driver, and he is retiring at the end of this year. And he's really good around this track. I was hoping I was going to see a win. And he was starting 4th, so like we were very hopeful for this. He was doing great. He was running P2 or between P2 and P5 in stages 1 and 2. And then stage 3, he was running P2, and he was pretty close up with Larson. And then there was a caution mid stage 3, and everyone dove into the pits, and my man was caught speeding on pit lane. So he unfortunately had a drive-through penalty. During this caution, I went to the bathroom and I came back, and like my dad, you could see his face. He was like, didn't want to break the bad news to me. He was like, so he's got a drive-through. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, another thing about Bristol when you're watching it in person, like you have to have the live timing up because the track is so short that everyone gets lapped. So it's like, how much is everyone lapped? I'm like, are they lapped once? Are they lapped twice? Kyle Larson he almost lapped the whole field. Like he was that far ahead. Like he in the oval, like when he crossed the whatever start finish straight, Chase Elliott, who was in second, was on the other straight. So like he was half a lap ahead of the second place driver, which is absurd to me. Larson, huge margin. It was so cute. It's like at the end, he does his donuts and then he comes over and he like kind of parks for a second. Because you go to the start finish straight to do the celebrating or whatever. And we're like, what is he doing like on the back straight after he did his donuts? And he picked up, we're like, oh, someone's like catching a ride, like hanging on the side. And it was his son. It was so cute. I was like, he would not get away with that in any other racing series besides NASCAR. But it was so cute. He's like hanging on to like the netting. And he drove him to like the start finish straight. And they both got up on the car because they always get up on the car to celebrate. And so him and his dad got up to like celebrate. It was so cute. And he was like, oh yeah, we're having like a boys weekend. Like it was just that, like just him and his son that had come out for the race. I was like, this is so cute. So that whole like celebration was adorable. And they get given a sword when you win at Bristol because it's the last great Coliseum. So the pictures are always iconic on Victory Lane. Another shout out because there only seemed to be one other person racing in stage 3, which was Bubba Wallace, who did an incredible job. He was literally the only one making overtakes like in stage 3. So he had some great passes. He drove an amazing race. My dad was happy because that's his favorite driver. So
your parents, when you're that young, are already your like heroes, but to see your dad celebrated on like that level of a stage, and just like I can only imagine being his little boy and being like, my dad is literally the coolest person on the front. Like
career day must be wild.
He probably will go back to school on Monday and be like, yeah, so I got to ride around in the Coliseum. My dad took me around, like,
and he got a sword.
He got a sword. No, sword. Like, it just is to be like, to live that through a child's eyes is just I know there's no words that are so special. On to not so special words. Truex, Gibbs, Burton, and Keselowski.
I think it's because, yeah, that sounds right, Julia.
We are eternally apologetic for butchering your name if you ever see this. We do not mean it out of any ugliness. We are just terrible at pronunciations. Have all since been eliminated. So, oopsies.
Like I said, it was kind of a boring race, but like it wasn't boring at the same time. The atmosphere was awesome. It was the first time I've gotten to the track like early enough to go to the fan zone and kind of see all of that. So that was really cool. They had like the kind of fan stage, and I got to see a bunch of the driver interviews. So like Joey Logano and my man Brad, who I can't pronounce his last name, Bubba Wallace, and the Trackhouse guys, Suarez, and I don't remember his teammate. Sorry. If I could recommend, I Granted, I have only ever been to Bristol, and I'm very biased towards it. But if I could recommend one NASCAR race for you to go to, it would be the Bristol Night Race. And don't just take my word for it. Take every single driver who I listen to at the fan zone's word for it, because they would all agree with me. It's one of their favorite races too. The atmosphere is just, you can't beat it. Like, a night race in Tennessee, the weather was great. It was the most beautiful sunset I've ever seen, like right before the race. Like, we had the flyover with the sunset. Like, it was just 10 out of 10. It's the most packed I've seen Bristol in years. And I like, that was just really encouraging to see. So many fans come out. So many families, kids, little girls with their dads. That always just like makes me so happy. There were so many little girls with their dads in Nashville that like made my heart so happy. So to see that in NASCAR too.
From F1 and NASCAR, it's time for everyone's favorite segment, the Ick Corner. Ick Corner. Kaylee, you're the queen of the Ick Corner. Take it away.
Whoever signed off on Daniel leaving Red Bull, dead to me.
Headphone users, rest in peace. To hop on that bandwagon, I second whatever the hell's going on down at Red Bull or VCarb. You guys are evil. Like, you've always been known as like the villain team. It is so clear now. This feels like exactly what happened with Logan, where it was a lot of speculation and nobody having the balls to just come out and say it. Y'all are evil. Like,
They gave
evil.
Satan a run for his money.
You know what? I hope that the Red Bull decline is just karma catching up with them, because I have love for like Max as a driver at this point, and like Yuki and Danny, and but everything else within that organization, like, big thumbs down.
I'm gonna relay, copy paste that sentiment as well. Besides that, I don't have like a person that is really making me out. The IndyCar charter, I'm not a fan of that, but we won't get into that.
That's fair. To close out the pod, our last segment is going to be the Brat Corner, our little brats of the week.
Franco, honestly, I have nothing but great words for him. I think he's hilarious. His little penalty comment for laughing, iconic. That is true brat form in its finest. No notes. Done. That was it. No notes.
Love Franco. My brat is Max, because he was just giving iconic F the FIA attitude. Him, Seb, and Lewis are carrying that on their backs with their hilarious forms of protesting against the FIA. So him just having his own press conference was just incredibly bratty of him. So I loved that. And then my other brat is a NASCAR brat, and that was Bubba Wallace, because he is one of those drivers, and I feel like it's him and Denny Hamlin that are probably the most booed people out of everyone, just because they're so polarizing, their personalities, they're very in your face. And so it was hilarious when he got booed on the fan stage, and then he goes, "Go Vols!" And then everyone starts cheering. And then he was like, funny how when Bubba Wallace says, "Hi, I'm Bubba Wallace, you boo me," and when Bubba Wallace says, "Go Vols, you all love me," and then someone else, like, they were like trying to ask fan questions, and like the one guy was like, "I don't like you," and he's like, "Well, you're still here, aren't you?" He's like, I've been up here for 5 minutes and you haven't left." Man is iconic. Like, it was so good.
Yeah, I gotta say, listen, when I was first an F1 fan, I was about as anti-Max as a girl could be. I was so, like, not a fan of him. And also, I mean, Drive to Survive made him a villain. And now that I've grown and I've learned a lot, he has quickly become one of my favorite people, because the lack of give an F that he has is supreme.
Just wants to go home and play with his cats and do sim racing.
He's
let
just
the man
a guy
live.
who's good at his job, and like doesn't care about being politically correct, and is tired of being like forced into a box of behavior. So he just won't. He just refuses. So his response to the FIA scolding him and giving him detention, I think, is absolutely hilarious. But my other brat this week is Oscar Piastri, but specifically him in the cool down room. There's a clip where Max is talking about like Lando kind of like saving himself from hitting the wall, and Lando is like, I shit my pants. And Oscar was like, oh, better be careful about swearing, or you'll have to do community service. And I was like, nice one.
Him being like to Lando, like with the microphone too. He's like, without swearing, how did you feel in that moment?
Yes, the fake microphone.
Yeah.
I find that really good brat energy, and I'm really here for it. And I think it's fun too, seeing Oscar kind of starting to like give personality.
Mm-hmm. I feel like he's one of those drivers that he observes and then he's like, okay, yeah, now I can offer.
But yeah, all in all, it's a week of highs and lows.
Yeah, lots going on.
I'm emotionally exhausted.
We've got a big old break till we're boots down in Austin.
So, from a week of many emotions, we say goodbye to you from our little corner in heaven, Race Report.